Now we start the 5090 O level, chapter 5. This is the chapter 5. This is video number 2, which is going to cover the animal nutrition, the parts which are left from video number 1. And the first thing that we talk about is the vitamins, the two vitamins which you need to study, vitamin C and vitamin D only. That's the only vitamins that you need to study in your syllabus. Now, the principal sources are citrus fruits, and their dietary importance is wound healing and improving the immune system. So, I mean, we advise you to take vitamin C when you are suffering from some sort of infection like a flu or some other disease process which is taking place in your body, because it helps in wound healing and improves your immune system. Then vitamin D is present in milk, cheese and all dairy products. It is needed for the absorption of calcium and for the deposition of calcium. You see, when you drink milk, it contains calcium and vitamin D. So the vitamin D helps in absorbing the calcium from the intestine and making it enter the blood, and then it helps in taking the calcium and depositing it in your bones, because calcium is deposited in your bones as calcium phosphate. And for that to happen, we need a vitamin D in our diets. So that's very important that you have enough vitamin D in your diet. Then we come on to calcium and iron. These are the two only mineral salts that we need to discuss with you all. Calcium is present in milk and cheese. It helps in what is the dietary importance of it? It strengthens bones and teeth. It's also required at synapses transmission. It is also required in blood clotting. So we need it in a few important processes which take place in the body. Then we talk of iron. Iron is present in chicken livers or goat livers, and it is needed only, we talk about the hemoglobin molecule, which is, so if you say it's needed for red blood cells, that's wrong, because hemoglobin is inside the red blood cells. So we need it for the hemoglobin, and then of course we don't say needed for the red blood cell, because that would be wrong. Red blood cell is a cell, it has a cell membrane and a cytoplasm, so that needs other ingredients. And basically hemoglobin is needed for the transport of oxygen. Then coming to fiber, the fiber which we have in our diet, which is absolutely essential for us and very good for us, is present in vegetables and fruit and whole wheat grains, whole wheat or any other whole grains like brown rice. And what is present in it is cellulose, and this cellulose cannot be digested. So if it is not digested, it is going to be, the importance is that it adds bulk to feces. You see, a person would not pass out any feces if he was on a liquid diet. Like for instance, if he was on some sort of a glucose saline solution and he would be on a drip, well, he would not make any feces. So adds bulk to the feces, so this will prevent constipation, and it keeps the colon healthy. So if the colon is healthy, then the person is not going to suffer from colon cancers. So this is what we need. That is why you need to be eating a good proportion of vegetables every day and a good proportion of fruits every day. And I hope everybody does that. Then the next and the last heading is water. How do we get water? We get water when you have an apple, 50% of it is water. If you drink something like you have orange juice or something. And the third way by which you gain water is metabolic water. Please remember, in every cell of your body, the process of aerobic respiration is taking place. And when aerobic respiration takes place, we have glucose combining with oxygen, giving you carbon dioxide and water. This gain, and there are some desert animals which only gain water by this process. So this is the gain that you have is happening in every cell of your body. Why do we need water? What is the dietary importance? It's a solvent. We need to transport glucose, amino acids in the blood, and that is present in the plasma. So it's a solvent for all these nutrients. Then 70% of the cells is water. Then urine, in order to remove the urea, it has to be passed out as urine. It can't be passed out as a solid. It has to be passed out in a liquid state. So the urine contains a lot of water. Feces contain a little bit of water. Then all your gastric juices have a lot of water. So water is absolutely essential, and your intake must be enough to cope with either the heat. If it's a very hot day, you're going to sweat a lot. where you need to compensate it by taking more water in your diet. Then we only need to study three diseases, which are scurvy, rickets, and anemia. Scurvy is a deficiency of vitamin C, and it results in bleeding gums and poor wound healing. Now, rickets is a combined disease in which there is a lack of calcium and vitamin D in our diets. So it's deficiency of calcium and vitamin D in our diets. And this, of course, doesn't, because calcium and vitamin D is required for the strengthening of bones and teeth. So this is going to result in soft bones. And then the person has bowed legs. And this only happens, please remember, rickets only happens in infants. So this is not a disease of older people. That's a different disease in which older people suffer from calcium and vitamin D deficiency. And that's not to be mixed with this. Rickets is only found in little kids, infants. And anemia, the last disease, is lack of iron in your diet. So if you are not eating enough meat, which gives you a lot of iron, liver gives you a lot of iron, so the person will have less hemoglobin, because iron is needed to make the hemoglobin molecule. So less hemoglobin means less oxygen carrying capacity, which results in the person feeling tired, and so less hemoglobin, less oxygen carrying capacity. The next is understand the concept of a balanced diet, and I usually explain this in a very simple manner, and I say 7 days in a week, and there's 7 items of a balanced diet. Now, there are carbohydrates, fats, proteins, vitamins, mineral salts, fiber, and water. Now, besides having these 7 components, they should be in the right proportions. So you can't be having a lot of fats in your diet, and you are not doing much work. So there has to be the 7 items, but also in the right proportions. Now it makes a little sense to you if you understand why I have written these in one color, because these are the only ones which have enzymes in our body, and these will only be digested. So we only talk of the enzymes which are going to digest these, and then these are going to be absorbed after they are digested. But the case of these, I mean vitamins, if you had orange juice, it has a lot of vitamin C in it, but that doesn't need to be digested. It's going to enter the blood and reach your body cells. So it doesn't need to be digested. If you had milk, well, in milk you had calcium, which is a salt, and so you had calcium. Calcium enters your blood, enters your body cells. Fiber is not digested, so that is out, but you need it for your normal healthy intestines. And water is absorbed as water, and it is so basically the enzymes which are needed is to digest these 3: carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. That is why we only study the digestion of these 3. We don't talk of vitamin C being digested, we don't talk of calcium being digested, and we don't talk of water being digested. So all these 3 need to be digested, and then we will discuss how these 3, which enzymes are produced to digest these 3. Then how a balanced diet is going to change regarding age, gender, and activity of a person. So we have to think of a 14-year-old and a 40-year-old. A 14-year-old would need more proteins. Why? Because he's growing. He or she is growing. So more proteins, more calcium, more vitamin D, and of course more carbohydrates, because more energy is needed. So, but a 14-year-old would need all these, but a 40-year-old probably would not need so much more of the proteins and the calcium and the carbohydrates. So age of a person and the diet. Then gender, we talk of the girls, because you see the girls start their menstruation, and this is loss of blood occurs every month. So they will only be needing more iron in their diet, and that will of course facilitate in the recovering from the iron loss which has occurred in the menstrual cycle, in which there is loss of blood every month. Then activity or the occupation of a person, I mean if there is a laborer who is carrying bricks up on till the 4th floor of a building, and he has to carry those up and there's no lift, so that's a lot of manual work, there's a lot of physical activity, there's a lot of muscular activity, and so more energy will be needed. So this person will be needing more carbohydrates. More carbohydrates means more either a paratha or a roti or a bread or rice or potatoes. So more carbohydrates, because the carbohydrates are digested to glucose and the glucose is the body fuel. So more carbohydrates for all the manual or the physical work that this person has to do. Then the next topic on the syllabus is malnutrition, and please remember malnutrition is overnutrition or undernutrition. Mal means there's something wrong, and that could be more or less. So overnutrition. So starvation is lack of food. There's no food available. There's drought, and there's no crops, so there's lack of food. In heart diseases, we talk about this in another chapter again. It is the blockage of the coronary arteries, and this blockage of the coronary arteries is due to intake of saturated fats. So the coronary arteries which supply the muscle in the wall of the heart are blocked, and that results in, of course, heart attacks. So that is heart disease. Talk about it in another chapter again. Constipation is lack of fiber in the diet. So no fiber, the person does not eat any fruit, any vegetables. So this constipation is the inability to form any feces, inability to pass out any feces. So that's mainly the reason, is because the person is on a diet which is very low fiber diet. So inability to pass out any feces. Then obesity. What is obesity? Well, first we would have to look at your height, then we'd have to look at your age, and then we'll have to look at what you are you a boy or a girl, so the gender, and then we would calculate your ideal body weight. So whatever your ideal body weight comes out to be, well, then we're going to figure out what is your ideal now how much do you actually weigh. Now if you have more than the ideal body weight, well, you're obese. If you're less than it, well, then there is something wrong with some disease process, that you're not even your ideal body weight. And so the more you are than the ideal body weight, the more obese you are. So obesity. Then we come to the part H of the syllabus, and this is problems that contribute to famine. Basically, they are more some sort of geographical ideas. Unequal distribution of food means that the richer countries have more crops and they have more technology. So richer countries, more technology, more aggressive farming machinery, so they can produce more crop in the same sort of size of the land. So more food in the richer countries and less food in the poor countries. Then drought means lack of there's no rain, so lack of rainfall. So if there's lack of rainfall, there is no irrigation systems, then that means the crops are going to be affected. So no crops, no food. Then flooding, you had good crop, but then flooding occurs and the crops are all ruined, because if water keeps on, there is water standing for a long time, well, all the roots are going to die. So flooding destroys crops. That is another a big major problem. So destroys crops. And then we have increasing populations. I mean, the population is increasing many-fold and the land is the same. So how much crop can you get out of it? Now, all these factors are contributing to famine. Famine means no food available, so people are dying of hunger and starvation. So these are the problems that contribute to famine. This is the H part of the syllabus. Unequal distribution of food, drought, flooding, and increasing populations. Now we come to the different types of teeth, and this is the K part of the syllabus. I've skipped a few things and we'll go back to those later on. Now the different types, we've got the incisors. Now you can see the incisors are actually four, which are the front teeth, and they look like this, and these are basically the incisors are for cutting. We don't use the word chewing, because chewing actually does not, if you chew gum the whole day, you don't break it up into pieces. So we talk of cutting, please do not talk of chewing. Canines are again also for cutting. Now we have canine, one on this side and one on the other side. So this is the canine here and this is the canine here. And then you have the premolars, which are these two teeth, and you have two on all sides. So two on this side, two on this side, and two in the upper jaw. So 4, and then we have the molars, which are these 3 at the back. So premolars 2 and the molars 3. So in sizes 4, the front 4 teeth, then 1 canine here, 1 canine here, and then 2 premolars on this side and 2 on this side, and the 3 molars on this side and the 3 on this side. So the structure, as you can see, in sizes and canine are basically for cutting. The premolars and molars are for grinding and crushing. So because they have these rough surfaces which you're going to push the food to the back, so they're going to result in the grinding and crushing of the food, so that then you can swallow it, mixes with the saliva and the help of the tongue, and the salivary glands which produce the saliva, they're going to help the food to make it into a bolus, and then of course it's going to be swallowed and it's going to go into the esophagus. Then we come to the structure of the tooth. The structure of the tooth has a crown, which is the upper part which you can see, and then the part which is embedded in the jawbone, that's called the root. So the crown and the root, this is what we have to remember. And the root is the part which is below the gum line. Then the outermost area is called the enamel, which is dead and does not contain any living cells. And then we have the dentine, and then we have the pulp or the pulp cavity. And inside the pulp cavity is the nerves and the blood vessels. So the nerves and the blood vessels are inside the pulp cavity, and this is when you get a hole in your enamel, and that goes down and reaches the pulp cavity. So this hole, now any food particle is going to enter this hole and is going to be taken down and is going to irritate the nerves and the blood vessels. The nerves and the blood vessels which are here inside the pulp cavity, and that is going to result in a toothache. Now we don't want that to happen, so in order to prevent dental decay, we need to look after our teeth, and we're going to study how we're going to prevent the dental decay. Now if you look at the structure of the tooth, the structure of the tooth is basically the enamel is the outermost part, which is the hardest part in the body. It's very difficult to even make a little injure it in any way, unless you of course hurt your tooth very badly. So the enamel is the hardest part, is the outside, and then you have the dentine, which is living and which grows, and then we have the pulp cavity, which contains the blood vessels and the nerves. So pulp cavity is the one which supplies the blood vessels, supply blood and the nutrients, glucose and oxygen, and also it contains the nerves. So now, how does dental decay occur? Dental decay occurs because if a certain person takes lots of sugary foods, if he takes lots of sugary foods, now the sugars stick to the teeth. And when they stick to the teeth, you have bacteria in your mouth. Now the bacteria feed on the sugars, and they produce an acid which is called lactic acid. And this acid dissolves the enamel. So this acid dissolves the enamel, and that results in a hole being made here. So this hole that develops goes right down, and ultimately it reaches the pulp cavity. Now when you eat something, like you eat something, you have ice cream or something else, now that ice cream or tea or coffee is going to reach here and irritate these nerves, and that's when you're going to get a toothache. So dental decay basically is the sugary foods that stick to your teeth. The bacteria in your mouth feed on those sugars, and they convert it into lactic acid, and the lactic acid then dissolves the enamel. So ultimately what you get is a hole in the enamel. So the hole starts to develop here, and then very slowly it is going to travel down and it's going to reach the pulp cavity. and that is when the food is going to enter this tiny microscopic hole and go and irritate the nerves. So dental decay. Now, how can we prevent dental decay? That is what we need to assess. Now, how can we avoid dental decay, or how we can prevent dental decays? Of course, avoid sugary foods, which of course is not very easy because we all love chocolates and we have to have sweets and chocolates. Then brush and floss after meals, preferably after meals, because you're going to remove any sugary foods which might stick to your teeth, and then of course the bacteria are present in your mouth. Whatever you might do, the bacteria is present because bacteria is present in the air. So bacteria will always be present in your mouth. So if you brush and floss regularly, well, you're actually removing the debris of the food which might have stuck to your teeth, and you're not removing the bacteria. Please remember that. Then you use an alkaline mouthwash. This is to neutralize the acid, but this also you can't do very regularly. You can only do it once a day. Then we can use fluoride toothpaste, and this of course is very good because what it does is it strengthens the enamel. So the enamel becomes even harder, and then of course the acid will not corrode it or dissolve it. Then if you have dental checkups regularly, well, you can prevent your teeth from being falling off ultimately, because if the root is affected and the pulp cavity is infected and you get tooth infection, then of course that is, you're going to ultimately, the tooth is going to become loose and it is going to have to be removed, and you'd have to have a root canal treatment, and then of course that might save the tooth, or ultimately we'll have to remove it. So we will stop this video here because we will continue on to the digestive system in the third video on this chapter. Thank you.